a gladiator, but first a man. Spartacus, an emblematic figure of the slave rebellion in Rome, was much more than a gladiator. His origins are lost in the mist of time, but it is known that he was Thracian, a people subjugated by the Romans. His life as a slave was harsh and cruel, an existence marked by forced labor, mistreatment, and constant humiliation. The gladiator school, a hell on earth. Before becoming the leader of a rebellion, Spartacus was trained in a gladiator school. These establishments were places of brutal training, where slaves were subjected to a regime of extreme physical training and deadly combat. The life expectancy of a gladiator was short, and death in the arena was a constant threat. Subhuman living conditions. Slaves in ancient Rome lived in miserable conditions. They were considered property and had no legal rights. They frequently suffered from hunger, disease, and physical punishment. Slavery was a deeply ingrained institution in Roman society, and slaves were seen as inferior and destined to serve their masters. The longing for freedom. The life of a slave was an existence without hope. Slaves longed for freedom, but they knew that escape was almost impossible. The surveillance networks were extensive, and the penalties for escaping were severe. However, the desire to live a dignified and free life was a universal feeling shared by all slaves. The spark of rebellion. The living conditions of the slaves, coupled with the military training they received in the gladiator school, created the perfect breeding ground for rebellion. Spartacus, with his charisma and leadership skills, became the catalyst that ignited the spark of rebellion. A symbol of hope. The Spartacus rebellion was much more than a simple slave revolt. It became a symbol of hope for all those who suffered under the yoke of oppression. The figure of Spartacus has transcended the centuries and continues to inspire fighters for freedom around the world. From gladiator to general. Spartacus' experience as a gladiator was fundamental to his later role as a rebel leader. In the arena, he learned to fight, to lead small groups, and to survive in extreme conditions. These skills, combined with his natural charisma, made him a respected and admired figure among his companions. A daring escape. The escape from the gladiator school was a crucial moment in Spartacus' life. Together with a group of other gladiators, he organized a risky escape that would mark the beginning of the Third Servile War. This audacity and determination showed his companions that he was a man capable of carrying out great feats. A born leader, as the rebellion grew, Spartacus proved to be a natural leader. He possessed a great ability to motivate his troops and a clear vision of the goals he pursued. His charisma and his ability to connect with people from different backgrounds made him an inspiring figure for all those who fought for their freedom. Brilliant military strategists. Spartacus and his generals proved to be brilliant military strategists. They managed to defeat several Roman armies, despite being outnumbered and lacking resources. Their knowledge of the terrain and their ability to adapt to changing circumstances allowed them to achieve numerous victories. A united army, under the leadership of Spartacus, slaves of different origins and nationalities united in a common cause. They overcame their differences and fought together for freedom. This unity was one of the keys to the success of the rebellion, an enduring legacy. The figure of Spartacus has transcended the centuries and has become a symbol of struggle and resistance. His story reminds us of the importance of freedom and the injustice of slavery. Spartacus continues to be an inspiration for all those who fight for a more just and equitable world. The start of the revolt. The Spartacus rebellion began with a daring escape from a gladiator school in Capua. Along with a handful of comrades, Spartacus managed to escape and, arming themselves with kitchen tools, they started a revolt that soon attracted other slaves from the region, a growing army. As the rebellion progressed, Spartacus' army grew exponentially. Slaves from nearby farms and estates joined his cause, attracted by the promise of freedom. Soon, Spartacus was leading an army of thousands of men, ready to challenge the power of Rome. Guerrilla tactics. Aware of their numerical and technological inferiority to the Roman legions, Spartacus and his generals adopted guerrilla tactics. They avoided direct confrontations and used ambushes, night raids, and rapid maneuvers to wear down the enemy. Initial victories. The first battles of the rebellion were a resounding success for Spartacus. His troops, motivated by the promise of freedom and led by a charismatic leader, managed to defeat several Roman armies. These initial victories boosted the morale of the rebels and attracted more slaves to their cause. The Siege of Rome. At the height of the rebellion, Spartacus' army came dangerously close to Rome. The city was terrified at the possibility of an attack. However, Spartacus decided not to besiege Rome, but to continue his march north, with the intention of crossing the Alps and establishing a new life for his followers. The betrayal of the allies. Despite his initial successes, Spartacus' rebellion was eventually quelled. Betrayed by some of the allied tribes and facing an increasingly numerous and better-equipped Roman army, Spartacus and his men were defeated in a series of battles. Impact on Roman society. The Spartacus rebellion shook the foundations of Roman society. The idea that slaves, considered property, could challenge the established order generated deep fear and mistrust in the Roman elite. The revolt exposed the deep social inequalities of Rome. The opulence of the patricians contrasted with the misery of the slaves, generating tensions and resentment. The rebellion served as a mirror that reflected the injustices of the system. The threat of new revolts led Rome to strengthen its repressive apparatus. Tougher measures were implemented to control the population and prevent future uprisings. The rebellion marked a before and after in the relationship between slaves and masters. The economic crisis caused by the rebellion further weakened the Roman Republic. The constant battles, the destruction of property, and the political uncertainty negatively affected the economy. The rebellion revived the debate on slavery. Some Romans questioned the morality of the system, while others defended the need to maintain social order. The revolt called into question the foundations of Roman society. The Spartacus rebellion accelerated the crisis of the Roman Republic. Political instability, social divisions, and external pressures weakened institutions and contributed to the fall of the Republic. Historical legacy. The figure of Spartacus became a universal symbol of the fight for freedom. His story has inspired countless social movements throughout the centuries, from the revolutions of the 19th century to the struggles for civil rights in the 20th century. Spartacus has been represented in various forms throughout history. From classical literature to modern cinema, his figure has been idealized and reinterpreted to adapt to different contexts and ideological currents. His story has been told and retold in numerous works of art, from paintings and sculptures to novels and films. These representations have contributed to consolidating his legend and keeping his memory alive. In the 19th century, Spartacus was adopted as a symbol by workers and revolutionary movements. His image was used to represent the struggle of the oppressed against the powerful. The story of Spartacus is still relevant today. His fight against slavery is a reminder that oppression in all its forms must be fought. The figure of Spartacus continues to generate debate. Was he a hero or a bandit? Was his rebellion a just cause or a threat to the established order? These questions remain open and generate various interpretations. The dark side of the rebellion. Violence and cruelty. A brutal war. The Spartacus rebellion was a brutal war. Both sides committed acts of extreme violence. The slaves, desperate for freedom, did not hesitate to attack their former masters with unusual ferocity, cruel reprisals. The Romans, in turn, responded with ruthless violence. The Roman legions massacred thousands of rebel slaves, without distinction between combatants and non-combatants. A vicious circle of violence. Violence generated more violence. The cruel acts committed by one side justified the reprisals of the other, creating a vicious circle of hatred and destruction. The dehumanization of the enemy. Both Romans and slaves dehumanized the enemy. The Romans saw the slaves as barbarians and subhumans, while the slaves saw the Romans as cruel oppressors. The impact on the civilian population. The civilian population was one of the main victims of the war. Cities and towns were looted and destroyed, and many civilians lost their lives. A legacy of violence. The violence of the rebellion left a deep mark on the collective memory. The image of Spartacus as a charismatic rebel leader was tarnished by the acts of violence committed by his followers. The figure of Crassus. Marcus Licinius Crassus did not act alone in the repression of the Spartacus rebellion. He was part of the First Triumvirate, an informal political pact with Pompey and Caesar. This alliance, although unstable, significantly influenced how the crisis was handled. Unbridled ambition. Crassus, known for his greed and ambition, saw the rebellion as an opportunity to increase his power and prestige. The defeat of Spartacus would provide him with the military glory he craved and consolidate him as one of the most powerful men in Rome. Alliance with Pompey. The alliance with Pompey, a victorious and popular general, was fundamental to Crassus. Together, they could divide power and resources to quell the rebellion more efficiently. Brutal strategy. To achieve his goals, Crassus employed a brutal strategy. His legions, along with those of Pompey, massacred thousands of rebel slaves, giving no quarter. This extreme violence was intended to deter others from following in Spartacus' footsteps. Political interests. The defeat of Spartacus not only satisfied Crassus' personal ambition, but also strengthened his political position within the triumvirate. His victory made him a more powerful rival to both Pompey and Caesar. A controversial legacy. The figure of Crassus has been the subject of debate throughout history. Some see him as a hero who saved Rome from an existential threat, while others consider him a cruel and ruthless tyrant. His role in suppressing the rebellion and his unbridled ambition have contributed to this ambivalent image. Hero or villain? There are different interpretations of Spartacus, the hero of the oppressed. For many, Spartacus is a symbol of the fight against oppression and a defender of the rights of the weakest. His rebellion is seen as a just cause against an unjust system. A charismatic leader. Spartacus' ability to unite thousands of slaves under one cause and his bravery on the battlefield have made him a legendary figure. A rebel without a cause. Others see Spartacus as a mere rebel who sowed chaos and destruction. They argue that his actions caused more suffering than benefit, a product of his time. Some historians point out that Spartacus was a product of his time and that his actions must be judged in the historical context in which he lived. A controversial symbol. The figure of Spartacus has been used to justify various political ideologies, from communism to nationalism. This politicization has contributed to its controversial nature. An ambiguous legacy. The legacy of Spartacus is ambiguous. On the one hand, it is a symbol of hope and resistance. On the other, it represents violence and destruction. Slavery in history, a universal phenomenon. Slavery has been a common practice in many societies throughout history. From ancient Greece to the 19th century United States, slavery has been a deeply ingrained form of oppression. Different forms of slavery. Slavery has taken various forms throughout history, from debt slavery to racial slavery. Ideological justifications. Slave societies have developed various ideological justifications to legitimize slavery, such as racial superiority or the need for labor. Long-term consequences. Slavery has left deep scars on the societies that practiced it. It has generated social inequalities, racism, and ethnic conflicts that persist to this day. The fight against slavery. Throughout history, numerous movements have emerged to abolish slavery. These movements have been fundamental to the construction of more just and equitable societies. Modern slavery. Although formal slavery has been abolished in most countries, new forms of slavery persist today, such as forced labor and human trafficking. The relevance of Spartacus today, a symbol of struggle. The story of Spartacus remains relevant today as a symbol of the fight against oppression and injustice. The importance of historical memory. Remembering the story of Spartacus helps us better understand the struggles for freedom that have taken place throughout history. The fight against inequality. The struggle of Spartacus is a call to action to fight against the social and economic inequalities that persist in the world today. The importance of solidarity. The union of the slaves under the leadership of Spartacus demonstrates the importance of solidarity and collective action to achieve social change. The challenges of the present. Although we have come a long way since the time of Spartacus, we still face challenges such as discrimination, exploitation, and inequality. An inspiring legacy. The story of Spartacus inspires us to continue fighting for a more just and equitable world, where all human beings have the same opportunities. Spartacus left us a legacy of struggle and resistance. His story reminds us that, despite adversity, there is always hope. The fight for justice and equality continues. May the spirit of Spartacus live on in each of us. From the sands of history, I salute the warriors of life. This phrase summarizes the spirit of Spartacus and his impact on history. His fight for freedom and equality resonates to this day, inspiring people around the world to rise up against oppression. Despite the brutality of the Roman repression, the spirit of Spartacus and his followers endures as a symbol of hope and resistance. His legacy reminds us that the struggle for a more just and equitable world is a battle we must continue to fight. The final phrase, from the sands of history, I salute the warriors of life, is a call to action for all those who fight for their ideals. It invites us to keep the memory of Spartacus alive and to follow his example of courage and perseverance. The fight for justice and equality is a task that concerns us all, and the spirit of Spartacus encourages us never to give up la perseverancia. La lucha por la justicia, y la igualdad es una tarea que nos compete a todos, y el espíritu de Spartaco nos anima a no rendirnos jamás. Don't forget to subscribe, comment on what you thought of the video, and share. Villainias, for more stories of villains and heroes, here's a more detailed breakdown. Don't forget to subscribe. This is a standard YouTube call to action, encouraging viewers to subscribe to the channel for more content. Comment on what you thought of the video. This encourages viewer engagement by asking them to share their opinions and feedback in the comment section. And share. This encourages viewers to share the video with others, which helps the channel grow. Villainias, for more stories of villains and heroes. This is the channel name, Villainias, and a tagline that explains the type of content viewers can expect, stories about villains and heroes.